Welcome back. Apple reported higher iPhone sales than the market expected after the bell yesterday, even though those sales were down for a second consecutive quarter on a year-over-year basis. That has sent the stock up 7% of the pre-market trade. There you see the stock in the pre-market trade. Our next guest says, however, there are still too many unanswered questions about this company's future. Joining us from New York is Santosh Rao. He's head of research at AT Manhattan Venture Partners, and he joins us from the New York, the NASDAQ, I should say, exchange market site. Santosh, thanks very much for joining us. There are two ways to look at these results. One is that the iPhone sales number was stronger than expected. The other is that these sales are in a double-digit decline. What do you think is the more important view to take on Apple?
Well, I think, good morning, first of all. Thanks for having me. I think the quarter was mixed. In the classic definition of the term, it was a beat and raise. They did come above consensus on revenue, EPS, and also guided above the midpoint of the next quarter's numbers. So on that end, it's fine. But under the hood, I see some issues. iPhone sales were strong. I'm not strong, but they came above our expectations. But a big chunk of that sales mix was iPhone SE, which is the low-end market, which is the lower priced iPhones, and it's all in the emerging market. So that's a big concern. And China was not a very good report. The sales were down quite appreciably, and Huawei is really doing a great job there. So I think that's a headwind right there, and that's supposed to be the next growth market. So there are a few issues there, and then the ASPs are down, and a few. So overall, I would say structurally, I think there are some issues under the hood.
Santosh, coming out of the report also, we saw at least some people are identifying as a bright spot the services revenue on Apple. And I'm just curious on your thoughts as to whether or not this is something that's going to continue over the next several quarters and years, that services are going to become an increasing component of Apple earnings overall.
Absolutely. I think that's their next growth engine. It's still a small part of their whole mix, but I think that's where the next growth area is as the iPhones come down. As the hardware business kind of tapers off, unless you see a big ramp up at the iPhone 7 and a big uptake of iPhone 7. But I see a general slowdown in the hardware business. So services is really the bright spot in this whole mix. And then you have a whole range of services there. The Apple Music, Apple Pay, Apple Watch, a number of applications with Siri. So all these things can be monetized very well. They're not there yet. They haven't found critical mass yet. They're good products, as all Apple products are, but they haven't found the niche that iPhone has. So I think it's going to be a while before you see a good ramp there, but it'll be a steady climb up from here in the services.
But that is going to be a long, steady climb, isn't it, Santosh? Revenue from the services segment, I believe, totals about $6 billion versus $40 billion plus from the iPhone sales. So is it not going to be a very long wait for investors before they see the services revenue at Apple becoming meaningful?
Yes, it'll be a long one. I think they're about 12% of the 12 to 13% of the total revenue base. So I think it's a long climb up. But they need to make this work. It's a big area. And then you have the other areas coming up, which is electric cars, the autonomous driven cars. So I think that's a way down. So in the near term, I think the services business has to ramp up, but it's going to be a slow ramp up.
Can you speak to the Chinese market? You had mentioned that in your earlier comments, and of course that perhaps this past quarter wasn't particularly strong. What do they need to do there to improve their operating performance, and what opportunities still exist in China, perhaps, that we haven't seen the benefits from?
Yeah, I think the problem with everybody loves iPhone. The problem is the premium market, the high-end market is pretty much saturated everywhere. I think they need to go down on the price points. Huawei is a fierce competitor. They already sold about 40 million units already in the first half. They have an ambitious plan to sell close to 140 million for the rest of the year. I think they sold 60 million, and I think they have a plan to sell 140 by the end of this year. So I think they are ambitiously and aggressively coming after iPhone. I think what they need to do is just target it better, just kind of build on the applications. Hopefully iPhone 7 will be better. But I think the biggest point there is the biggest gating factor or limiting factor in China is the price points. They need to bring it down because competition has caught up. Every phone has good features right now, so you need to differentiate more and more while keeping the prices down. So and keep trying to manage the gross margin in that area. So I think it's a tough grind up, but they'll compete, but it's not going to be easy.
The stock is trading at less than $100 now. 96.67 was the close yesterday. That's about $25 off its record high. It's trading at about 11.5 times forward earnings. Despite all these concerns about the future of the company, is the stock attractively valued now for investors who might want to be considering getting in?
Right. And having said all those comments that I just made, I think iPhone, this quarter, what it did essentially is bought them time. They do get the benefit of doubt. After all, it's iPhone, it's Apple, so they have a lot of cash. They can reinvent themselves, and which they always do. They can come up with different new areas to grow, or come up with new products to talk about. So I think they bought themselves a good time. 3Q is seasonally a very slow quarter, so I think they managed it pretty well. So I think 4Q and then the rest of the year, they have bought themselves time. So let's see how the iPhone 7 does, and let's see how the 4Q holiday season does. So I mean, the 1Q fiscal 1Q holiday season does. So I think there are some good factors ahead. They get the benefit of doubt. Let's see if they can execute there.
Can you just expand a little bit on the iPhone 7 in terms of the upgrade cycle? Just very quickly, are you expecting this to be anything that really does change people's expectations for the iPhones going forward?
I don't. I have a very muted expectation there. I think the only enhancement is going to be their wireless headphone jack, or rather, no, they're going to remove the jack there, and it's going to be wireless headphones. So I think that's going to be the biggest upgrade there. So other than that, I see a few here and there. I think the Siri, you might get some upgrades on the Apple Pay. But other than that, I don't see anything big coming out of iPhone 7. So I think it's really you have to look out to iPhone 8, where we'll see, hopefully they'll come up with something new there. But iPhone 7 is supposed to be pretty much not that much revolutionary.
Santosh, we're glad we had the chance to speak to you. Thank you very much.